Miss T, again, I say good morning to you and I thank you as well. Do you want to give us a background of who you are and how important it is that what made you to volunteer this morning to join us on this show? Because it takes a lot of courage and there's something you want to pass on out to those who are listening to us out there. What exactly has your journey been so far, and what exactly, how do you think your comment this morning can be of very, very good help to our dear listeners back at home?
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to come on today to speak about the issues I faced back then, surviving it. I'd just like to share my story to let anyone that, has gone through or is still going through what I went through know that there is hope and there's help out there. I mean, when you're in the situation, you don't necessarily see that there's a way out and you don't see that hope. So I just like to come on, share my story, and I hope that someone will get the courage that they need to say no to domestic violence.
Thank you. Steve. Veronica, do you have something to ask or add to?
Yeah, I think that if Miss T doesn't mind, if she can just give us a little background at first in terms of, maybe how you met, and then when the red flags, when you started to recognize the red flags, if you can just share with us, and then we can ask questions around your experience. And feel free, if you need to stop at any point, please feel free to do so. Thank you very much, Miss T. Over to you.
Okay, so this was many years ago, but I do remember. Well, it was friend of a friend, and that's how I met this person. Begin with, there was no indication that this, would be, what to expect in the future. And then it started with a bit of controlling of, where I go, who I go with, how late I can stay, who I can speak to on the phone. And that continued for a while. Initially, everything was fine. As I said, there was no indication that this was to come until he started to control my movements. Like, who are you talking to? Why are you home from work so late? I mean, back then I used to finish work at about 4:30 in the evenings. And if I got home later than I would usually do, then that would be an issue, like an argument. And then it moved on from, arguments to like not necessarily a slap, but just like a shake, like, make sure you come home on time tomorrow or next week. And then it just progressed to physical abuse after that over the years. I'm not sure if I answered everything that you asked.
Yeah, so I have a question, if you don't mind. So you said initially one of the red flags was a controlling behavior. And at first, when your ex-husband or ex-partner, whomever that may have been, did they at first, how did you feel about it? How did you respond? Did you think it was, in fact, let me not put words in your mouth. How did you feel when he first started to kind of control you? What did that look like for you? How did it feel?
I was very uncomfortable with it, but the thing with this person, he don't know if I could say he could switch, he could just change. So he would be, as they would say here, as nice as pie 1 minute, and then he would turn. So I just thought that, okay, maybe he's having a bad day whenever that would happen. And I thought I was making excuses for him, basically. I thought it would change. I thought this is just a phase that he's going through, and it would change. And I was hoping for it to go back to what it was in the beginning of the relationship.
And what was it like at the beginning of the relationship? How can you describe it at the beginning? How would you describe it?
At the beginning, he was lovely. We would go out for meals, go out to the movies. We would just, stay at home like most couples do. We would watch movies. We would have a laugh. Good banter was there. But then, it changed. But yes, in the beginning, it was really lovely. The gifts, the sorry, you look beautiful today, and all of those things that you'd expect at the beginning of a relationship. It was there, no issues whatsoever.
Thank you. Luigi.
So you say then that before you actually started out on the journey, you didn't have any kind of reservation or any sense of fear or any red flag that you could be heading for trouble. You said you met him with a friend or something, like he got introduced to you by a friend or something.
Yes.
Yeah. So up until when you started your friendship and then before you moved in together, there was nothing that suggests that it was going to be coming up with such behaviors and attitude that threatened the relationship, to say.
No, there was no indication. Obviously, I knew that he, how do I put this? He was not a pushover, but it was never towards females. It was always towards the opposite sex. He was able to defend himself, and he would back down from anyone. He just didn't fear. He had no fear, basically, of anyone. But nothing to indicate that then, to a female, that would be something that would happen in the relationship.
So, was there anybody around that you could say was like a mentor to him, or someone like a friend, a confidant that you can also relate with during times? Because every relationship has its own ups and downs anyway. So, and there are times when there could be a friend, like a third party, like a older person in the family that you can confide into. Help me speak to this person. His behavior is becoming untoward towards me. So was there no such person in between in this relationship?
There were individuals that we were both friends with, but they knew what was happening, but I guess they were just too to speak to him about it.
Sorry, you said they were just too what?
Too afraid to speak to him about it.
I see. And how long did it go for? Because you were saying that it started out as little bits of controlling, little bits of threatening, little bits of here and there until it became evident. It was one thing that looks like, oh, let me look over this. We will get over this. And then you were not getting over it, and it was escalating into the next thing, and then until it became unbearable. So how long did all this for how long did it last before you felt you just have to come out of this relationship? How long did this last?
About, I can say about 4 years.
Okay.
And yes, about 4 years before I finally had the courage to walk away, not without a fight and not without fear of losing my life as well.
Mm. And so what will you tell me is the reason why you didn't leave year one, you didn't leave year two? You were just there for like another 3 years or more. What were you,
Right.
what was your thinking? What was your expectation?
My expectation was that he would change because that would be his promise after every beating. His promise was that he's going to change. He never like blamed me for it when he did it. He would always come back and say sorry. And he would, at one point he was getting a hot flannel to like put on the bruises and crying whilst he was doing it. So, and telling me how much he's going to change and he's sorry. And I believed him because this is somebody I loved. So I believed him that he was actually going to change. So that's my reason for staying in it. And then in the latter end, then my reason was fear because I would be threatened by him that if I can't have you, then no one else will. So I stayed in the end out there.
So it seems to be someone who has a kind of a mood swing, if I can summarize this kind of a personality. Yeah. So sometimes it's a sweet, jolly, nice person, and then the next occasion it's on the other side. Is that correct? Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, it could be nice as pie for 3 months, but then in the back of my mind, it's almost as if I'm calculating because it became like a pattern. So I would calculate it and say in my mind, like, everything is running too smoothly, and I was just waiting for something to happen because it became like almost like a cycle where, it only lasted for so long before something else would happen. So it wasn't like all the time, but it's like I could feel when it was going to come on because everything was too smooth.
And so you mentioned also that he attempted separating you from your own social setting. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And so was there? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I wasn't allowed to go out with my friends and even relatives. One particular occasion where my granddad had passed, and my mother was visiting at the time. She came for the funeral, and he allowed me to go, but he was constantly calling me to come home. So I wasn't allowed to go and, be with my family afterwards. I had to literally hurry up and get home at the time that he had said, okay, you need to be home by this time.
Yes. Veronica, what do you have for Miss T?
Yeah, thank you very much, Miss T. You said initially that you were introduced to your ex by a friend. Do you think that your friend knew the type of person that he was and that you might have been in potential danger?
I'm not quite sure, but back of my mind, I'm thinking that yes, the friend knew, of some history that he had of
Right.
being abusive to others.
Okay. But they didn't give you any kind of warning or anything like that? Did they kind of, speak to you about him, any concerns that you should be aware? And yeah, did they do that at all?
No, they didn't. They didn't say anything. In fact, they encouraged the relationship because I I started going out with this person like immediately when I was introduced to him. This person actually pursued me
Right.
over a period of before we got together.
And that's interesting that you say that he pursued you. And we know that sometimes what perpetrators of abuse do, it's called love bombing. Are you familiar with that terminology, love bombing?
No.
Can you hear me, Miss T?
Yes, I can hear you. No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, so just for everybody, so that they're aware, love bombing is when somebody does pursue you, but they they overly pursue you. So they're in contact with you all the time in order to ensure that they achieve their pursuit, and that's wrapped up in a lot of attention and love gestures. You're amazing, or I see a future with you, that type of thing. Can you relate to that at all, wrapped up in the charm? So we know that perpetrators of abuse are very, very charming. Would you say that was one of the characteristics of your ex at all?
It's funny you should say that because that's what persuaded me, his charm, to actually go out with him. It was a charm. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. And in that, do you feel that you kind of was led to that false sense of security that that he was definitely worth giving your time at the time to start dating him?
Yes, because I believed everything that he was saying to me, and I believed them that they were genuine,
yeah,
and coming from good heart. So
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And was that part of how long would you say that the honeymoon period lasted before you started to see cracks? Your intuition started to say something isn't quite right. You mentioned that it started with control. How soon into the relationship did the control kind of become apparent?
Maybe about the end of the first year. When I started thinking that, okay, he's not the same person, because it wasn't so before. Obviously, at the beginning, we did not live together at the beginning. So once I moved in with him, then that's when it started.
Okay, all right. And then after the control, what happened next? Before we move on to that, in terms of the control, did you feel that it was normal? What was your thoughts around his control of you? What were your thoughts at the time, if you can remember? What were you thinking, if you can remember?
I didn't think it was normal. But what I put it down to was jealousy.
Okay.
I put it down to jealousy, because he would say, you're spending too much with your friends. Because my friend that actually worked with her, so he's saying, you're with her all day at work. Why do you still need to go out with her? So I just thought he was just jealous that I needed the attention that I was giving to my friend.
So in that, was you isolated? Did you start to isolate your family and friends and stuff?
Yes, very, very isolated, and one of the reasons for that that contributed to it, I was ashamed to tell anyone what I was going through, apart from who was in our circle and knew what was happening.
And then can you just explain after the control, what happened next? How did it progress and become more abusive? How did he progress in becoming more abusive towards you, if you don't mind sharing?
Um, well, the physical abuse started one evening I came home from work. And even before I got there, I had a phone call from him because he would sometimes go to spend time, so he claimed, with his family, with his mother, like every other weekend or so. And I remember I went to a graduation with my friend, and they were taking some photographs. So my friend's boyfriend was standing behind me, and the person that was taking the photograph said to me, he doesn't like to take pictures. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just bend over so I can snap him. So I did that. And then these photos were printed and they were left at the house. So now when he came back from the weekend, and that was the Monday, I got the phone call at work to say, so this is what you're doing when I'm away. So I said, what do you mean? And then he said, wait until you get home. So my heart was racing. I didn't know what that meant, or, whatever it was. So when I got home from work the evening, then the photos were all lying there. Obviously, the photo that I spoke about, I was in it, bending over so this person could take the photograph. He said I was dancing with this person, with my friend's partner at the time. And I'm like, it's not what you think. I explained he just wasn't having it. He was very, very angry. And that's when the physical abuse started. It was horrible that day. I blacked out. I was completely knocked out from one of the blows that I received.
So sorry to
hear. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very sorry about this.
Well, you've mentioned 2 incidents, but was there more incidents that you endured over the 4 years? Did it get worse? Do you remember maybe the worst incident that you might want to share? Entirely up to you. Thank you.
Yes, I think the worst of it was on one occasion where my mom had called and I was on the phone speaking to her. He came and said something, and I said to him, I'll, deal with it afterwards when I'm done with the phone call. So he walked away, and then he just waited basically for me to finish. And as soon as I got off the phone, that was just a slap in the face. As soon as I got off the phone, and then the beating started, I ran. What I did, because he held onto my clothes, I had like a vest top on. I managed to get out of the top, and that's how I escaped through the doors without wearing a top. I literally ran out without wearing a top because I just felt like he was going to kill me. And then he chased me on the street, and I've got the scar. above my eye. He picked up a stone and just slapped me above my eye with it. There was just blood everywhere. And I'm sorry for being so graphic. And I still have the scar today above my eye. So that was the worst of it all. Well, obviously, it continued, but that was the worst of it all. I decided at that time to leave. I didn't spend the night there. I had my friend came and picked me up. And when I went back with my friend the following day to gather my stuff, what he did, he hid my stuff. He hid a foot of each pair of shoes. He just hid everything so that I wouldn't leave. He wasn't there, but he hid my stuff. I did leave, and I went to stay with my dad for a while. And then he begged me to come back, said he was sorry, and all of that. I stayed away for a while, and then I went back. So, yeah.
And I just want to put it out there that, sometimes people that are suffering from domestic abuse will return to the relationship. And even then, it's not to blame yourself if this is a pattern that you found yourself in. So the victim survivor, and I'm hoping that Miss T can relate to this, is that the victim survivor knows the other side of the perpetrator, where the perpetrator is remorseful. You described that he helped administer to your wounds. He helped. I don't know whether he used a cloth, whatever it was, but he helped to soothe the wounds after giving you that, that you describe it as a beating.
Mm.
So, I just want to again say that sometimes victim survivors do go back. Let's not judge them. Let's not condemn them for going back, because there are multiple reasons why. And unfortunately, people that haven't been in those types of relationships start to blame the victim survivor and saying, well, you should leave. Sometimes it's not that easy to leave because they're in love with that individual, but what they don't like is the abuse. They want the abuse to stop. They know the other side of the charming side. They love that side of the individual. And you also said, sometimes the period between the abuse was like 3 months, is what you described. Isn't that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of that, what happened? So it was the relationship, you said, lasted for 4 years before you escaped.
Yeah.
And during that time, I'm assuming that you suffered more physical abuse during that time. Is that right?
Yes. And some of it was being forced to sleep with him, because obviously, I didn't want to be physically intimate with him because of what was happening, but then I had to because I was forced to do it. So, and one occasion, my mom had come over to stay completely unaware to her, like, what was happening. And my mom was in the other room. We were in one room next to her room. And he wanted to be intimate. And I said, no, because my mom is in the next room. That's not something I'm comfortable with. And he just put his hand up my throat and just forced me to do it with my mom next door, which I felt embarrassed and I felt like it was disrespectful. My mom is a Christian, and I didn't feel comfortable being intimate with my mom under the same roof as me.
Sorry to hear this. You're obviously describing sexual violence
Yeah.
occurred. I'm really sorry to hear that you had experienced that. How did you view that? The fact that he forced you, how did you view it at the time? Did you see it as, I don't want to put words in your mouth, how did you view that? How did you feel at the time?
Obviously, it was, done against my wishes, so he didn't have permission. But I didn't know what I know now. I didn't know it then that is rape, even though we were together. I did not view it, as I viewed it as something wrong. Let me put it that way, because I said no, but I didn't consider it to be something that I'd have any right to withhold at the time from him.
It's really, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you had experienced it, your own words, that even though you were intimate with him previously, on this particular occasion, and I don't know if it happened occasions after or before that, but the word that you used was that you were raped by your partner, your husband. You were actually raped, because we've also talked, haven't we, Olu?
That's right, about sexual violence, even within marriage.
That's right.
Or within a legitimate relationship. Yes, we did.
Go ahead, Olu.
Yes, yes, we have spoken extensively a couple of weeks ago that it's actually possible for people to still experience sexual violence within legitimate relationships, whether it's male-to-male relationship or male-to-female relationship. This we explored, I think, about 2 or 3 editions before today. And so, yes, it's one of those things that is playing to life, playing back now, with Miss T coming to tell us that it happens within. Miss T, by the way, is this a legitimate marital relationship, or you were just cohabiting, or you were just, what sort of relationship was this, by the way?
We weren't married, we were just together.
You were legally married?
No, we were not.
Okay, so it's just you were just cohabiting friends, so to say. And so we will not, I would imagine that there was no child involved, so throughout the 4 years. No child? Do you have any children?
No.
So made it a bit easier, because otherwise we have been talking of custody and stuff. So it's one of those things. I still feeling pained personally for those traumatic physical abuse that you experienced. I can't just get it clear off my head just like that. I can't just imagine. I put myself in your shoes, to be honest, and even though I'm a man, I can't just imagine. I can't imagine. So, and that's the reason why we are crying out now. This is actually the essence. It's unimaginable that was it 1 out of every 4 homes? That statistics was. Remind me, Veronica.
Yeah, 1 in 4 women.
More. Can you imagine? And it's happened as we speak now, right inside the studio. That means if I count 1, 2, 3, by the time I count 4 residential apartments next door, we're likely to find one. That's the meaning of that statistics, isn't it?
Yeah, that's been affected in their lifetime. Yeah, that's correct.
And that's the reason why for this radio show, to be honest, so that we can have a society, a community that can be educated, informed, and where need be, victim survivors can also come out to be encouraged, and where need be for them to have a kind of therapy to bring them out of that experience. Ms. T, are you receiving help immediately after all this? Have you started speaking to counselors?
Back then, no, I just got over it. And when I say got over it, I just moved on with my life. Now, in my studies, I do, as part of my training, then I do receive counseling.
So what will you personally advise those who are passing through this kind of a thing? Because do you know some people are passing through what you're passing through now, and they are not actually able to come out still? What will you advise them?
My advice would be that there is help, because a lot of women who are going through this, they don't know of the help that exists for them. And they feel like if they report this or tell someone, then they will not be safe. If they have children, they feel like the children will be put at risk, and that's why some people stay in it. You know, it's just the whole shame and the stigma that's attached to it. So I'm just saying to anyone that's going through it right now, don't be ashamed. Like Veronica said, it is not your fault that this individual is doing this to you, and you know you're worth way more. And if you love someone, you do not hurt them. So no matter how they tell you that I love you and I won't do it again, don't buy into it, because then it becomes a pattern and they have that stronghold over you emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and in every way possible. And then before you know it, you become trapped in that situation. So just leave, you know, seek help. There are people out there like Veronica and other people who can map this for you, plan your escape from that relationship. One of the things that pushed me to really leave was when I saw this person kill the neighbor's dog with a machete, and he enjoyed it. And that I had chills, because I could picture myself being killed with that same machete. And then that pushed me to leave, to escape from my life, because I put myself in that dog's position. It wasn't easy at first to leave, but that was the thing that pushed me, and that was my wake-up call to escape out of that relationship. So I'm just begging you to speak to someone. There is help out there. So speak to someone about what you're going through, and don't be ashamed, because it's not your fault.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you very, very much.
That's horrific in terms of the, you know, the experience that you witnessed, that, you know, he would then, you know, chop this dog up, and that you were able to see that he was actually enjoying it, which says that there, you know, there was, he was sadistic in, you know, getting joy from injuring or killing this dog.